In episode 13, the story begins with a thunderstrike that is on its way to Cat's lair. Now, inside the thunderstrike were Lynx-o, Mumm-ra, and Bengali. And now here comes the problem. The thunderstrike's out of control. Meanwhile, in the Cat's lair's meeting room, we have Tiger, Chitara, Panther, the Thunderkins, and Lino. And they just heard a commotion coming from outside. It's the thunderstrike that's out of control, and they had no idea why. Also in the meeting room was Snarf, and he just saw a thunderstrike that's heading towards Cat's lair, and he thought it was going to crash, while the other Thundercats hid under the table. But luckily, the thunderstrike didn't crash, and now the Thundercats are wondering what is going on and why did the thunderstrike go out of control the way it did. Back with Snarf, he wanted to know if Lynx-o is the one that's flying the Thunderstrike is a little old for joyriding. He asked this to Lino. But Lino had a thought and suspected that what had happened is no game at all. Something is terribly wrong. Back with the Thunderstrike, as you may have guessed it, in Lino's case he's not wrong. Because back with the two pods that had just injected from the Thunderstrike itself, and that had Mumm-ra and Bengali. With good news for the pods of the Thunderstrike, they managed to land intact and without a problem. Also, the good news, Mumm-ra and Bengali, who got out of the pods, they managed to make it out all right. So, back with Mumm-ra and Bengali, they're now on their way to Cat's lair. At the same time, the Thundercats that were inside of the lair, they were on their way out to meet up with them. Now that everybody has met up outside of Castlear, Palmyra went first to speak in her case to say that there's something up with Lynx-o and there's something wrong with him. Then Bengali had pleaded his case. He said he was in control of the left pod at the moment, Lynx-o that is, but then some reason the controls won't respond to him. And now they're wondering what is going on with Lynx-o and why did he freak out all of a sudden. And now poor Pumara is getting worried and concerned about Lynx-o and told Lionel that something must be done about it. Well, according to Lionel, although he agrees with her, he said that there must be a way to calm Lynx-o down, so he did what any good guy would do. He looked over his shoulder to look at Panthro and said to get the Thunderclaw ready, and so Panthro agrees. So, long story short, in the Thunderclaw we have Lino and Panthro, and they are now trying to catch up to the head of the Thunderstrike that had Lynx-o inside. So what Lino did is he's asking Panthro to maneuver over it. So Panthro agrees, and he did just that. Now, once that was finished, and then long story short, Lionel just told Panthro that it's now up to him to calm down Lynx-o. So what Lionel did is that he jumped on top of the head part of the Thunderstrike, and there he sees Lynx-o. Well, back with Lionel, long story short, well, good news he made it, and now he's trying to get Lynx-o's attention, but he couldn't do it because Lynx-o was freaking out, something about the power of the Gorgon and etc. Back with Lionel, and long story short, he just told Lynx-o from his Sword of Omens to say, listen to me, you must let me aboard the Thunderstrike right away. So Lynx-o agrees. Once Lionel's aboard, it is now up to Lionel to land at the head of the Thunderstrike and intact, and without harming Lynx-o in any way. So he did. Well, good news for Lionel, he not only landed the Thunderstrike safe and sound and intact, but Lynx-o will be all right. So, meanwhile, in the Castler's meeting room, we have Tiger, Chitara, the Thunder Kittens, Pumira, and Bengali, and also Snarf. So when Lionel and Panther came back, although it is confirmed that Lynx was now in his room sleeping, so Lionel told them the good news that Lynx will be all right. So back with Lionel after telling everyone the good news, he wanted to know from Palmyra and Bengali what is going on here. What brought on the attack anyway? Well, Palmyra, in omission by confession, just told Lionel what had happened. She said just the night prior, and that's when flashback, the previous night at the Tower of Omens, everything seemed fine, and Lynx-o was fine too, but all that changed. The reason? Because according to Palmyra in the present scene, that's when Lynx-o had received some kind of information that was so terrible, and that's why he freaked out, just like he did earlier. So Lynx-o, in Palmyra's case, had been flipping out, something about the hills of Imashima is about to be brought to life because of the mask of Gorgon and etc., just like he did earlier that morning. And that explains why the thunderstrike went out of control the way it did, because Lynx-o wanted to prevent something, whatever it was, from happening. But that's not all. Lynx-o also said something about the sword's eye power, and that would bring disastrous consequences if it ever combines with the Mask of Gorgon's power. So back in the present, in the Castler's council room, now Lionel is really confused, and he's wondering what's the sword's eye power has to do with everything. He isn't sure, so he asked about it. Gally, on the other hand, has his turn to plead his case. He said he isn't sure of it either, so when he asked Lynx-o about it earlier, but he kept going on and on and on and on, and he couldn't make any sense of it. Now Bengali's just as confused as Lionel is. So now what Bengali wanted to know from Lionel, what are the hills of Inshima anyway? Well, Lionel was more than happy to explain. He said that there are forgotten mountain ranges that is nearby. Better than that, it's not far away from the Black Pyramid where Mumm-ra lives, Lionel explains. Has his turn to not only agree with Lionel, but then please his case. He knows something's off with Lynx-o, and now he's left to wonder what is going on here. Well, Pumira has her turn to not only agree with Panther, she too wants to know what's going on, but there's just no way, because according to her, she said that there's no way of finding it out. But Lionel said, on the contrary, there is a way, through his sword of omens, of course. So just like what any good guy would do, Lionel looked through his sword's eye to tell him what's been going on with Lynx-o, so that's what he did. Then what Lionel saw through the sword's eye was unbelievable. A red book on that little table. Now he finds this really, really weird. That what he also saw is that the book is starting opening up. So Lionel wanted to tell his sort of omens to investigate further, so it did. So what Lionel saw next is not only is the book open, but something is coming out of the book itself. What is going on there? Now that Lionel had finished his investigation through his sword, he said that whatever's going on in that book and what it's for, it says to be is extremely powerful and very dangerous. Well, in Lionel's case, he's not kidding. So meanwhile in the Black Pyramid's tomb chamber, and we know who's the one that's reading the book to begin with, none other than, you guessed it, Mumm-ra himself. Probably wondering what kind of a book that Mumm-ra's looking at. Well, according to Mumm-ra, the book he's looking at is not only twice his size, only bigger, but it contains a lot of history, and it's Third Earth records, everything else, including the Mask of Gorgon that he was looking for. Now you're probably wondering what was Mumm-ra's plan and why he wanted the mask so bad. Well, according to Mumm-ra, he said in his case that if the mask was ever found, he must use it for his own purposes and his own gain. And better than that, he could bring back a child. So he needed the two lunatics to do a favor for him. So what better way to do it than with Tugmug and Chilla of the lunatics? So they arrived at the tomb chamber. So when Chilla and Tugmug had arrived at the tomb chamber, what Chilla wants to know from Mumm-ra, what favor he wants from them. Well, according to Mumm-ra, he just told them that he has a mission for them. But before he could get underway, what Chilla wanted to know from Mumm-ra if she knows where the Treetop Kingdom is, where the warrior maidens live. Well, back with Chilla, she just said that not only did she and Tugmug knew where it is, but let's not forget, Willa, the leader of the warrior meetings, lives there too. So what Mumm-ra said to Chilla and Tugmug to tell them, this is your mission. There's a mask that's hidden somewhere there, and only the warrior maidens are guarding it. But that's not all. According to Mumm-ra, he just told Chilla and Tugma that it's located somewhere in the Treetop Kingdom, and there's the tallest tree that is resided there. And that's where, according to him, that's where they'll find it. So before Tugmug and Chilla can head off, this when Mumm-ra says, go to the tallest tree and destroy it, and get me the mask of Gorgon, he said. So after that, both Chilla and Tugmug were sent on their way. Now that Chilla and Tugmug had left the pyramid, they're now on the Ice Runner. Well, luckily, they have arrived at the Treetop Kingdom. And that's when, thanks to Chilla, she spotted the tallest tree up ahead, just like what Mumm-ra said. Back with Chilla and Tugmug, now that they found it, now all they had to do was find a place to land the Ice Runner, so that's what they did. Meanwhile, Willa, the leader, and of course her sister Nada had just found out that the lunatics had arrived. So even though Willa wasn't sure who they are, but Nada says that she's gonna go check it out, so that's what she did. So back with Nada, who's Willa's sister, she approached Chilla and Tugmug of the Lunatics. She says, "Hold it right there. Don't come any closer." And that's when Chilla had pleaded her case and to coin a phrase, "Why should I waste my breath on you?" So she does what she knows best. She froze Nada in ice. Back with Willa, who's the leader of the Warrior Means, after she found out what had happened and that her sister is frozen thanks to Chilla of the Lunatics, she wasted no time to get help right away. Back with the Warrior Means, they were attacking the Lunatics, Tugmug and Chilla. So long story short, back with Chilla and Tubbuck who were hiding behind the rocks, so Chilla, just like what she did with Nada, she did what she knew best. She froze all the warrior maidens in ice, including that tallest tree that Mumm-ra had told both her and Tugmug about back at the pyramid. And lo and behold, there's the mask of Gorgon, just like what they were told about as well. So, long story short, Chill just told Tugmug to do what he knows best, use his gravity gun to bring the mask down, so Tugmug did. So now that Tugmug had did its job and the mask landed on the ground, so it's now up to Tugmug to stand it up, which he did. So he even finds it very weird, and so did Chilla. And now she's left to wonder, why are the Gorgon's eyes closed? But then suddenly next was unbelievable. The mask just suddenly opened its eyes, and what it did next is that it turned Chilla to stone. Tugmug, who saw what had happened, he got upset. So now back with Tugmug, he's now all upset because of what the Mask of Gorgon did to Chilla. So he pleaded his case with it. He says, "Well, you may have turned Chilla to stone, but you won't get me." So what Tugmug did is that he grabs the mask and placed it face down on the ground, but not for long. So what the mask did is that after it stands itself up, it did the same thing to Tugmug just like it did with Chilla. So Tugmug was turned to stone too. It was right after Tugmug had pleaded a case to say if Mumm-ra wants the mask so bad, he should get it himself. That was a mistake on his part. So meanwhile, at the Black Pyramid's tomb chamber, Mumm-ra, who saw what had happened, as you may have guessed it, Mumm-ra was in awe, and he was pleased to see that yes, the Mask of Gorgon works. He just hated to do this to Tugmug and Chilla, but he had to find out for himself. At least that's what Mumm-ra told his canine friend. Back with Mumm-ra, he also told his canine pal that somewhere in the book is an incantation. He says that he can use it to bring the mask to the tomb chamber itself. So that's exactly what he did, and before long he found it. Before Mumm-ra can proceed, he told his canine pal not to worry, that the Mask of Gorgon will never harm him as long as he's the master. At least that's the case. So Mumm-ra went ahead and did the incantation, just like what any bad guy would do. Next thing you know, the Mask of Gorgon appeared just the way it's planned, in the tomb chamber itself. So now that's finished, all Mumm-ra needs to do next was to ask the Mask of Gorgon for one simple favor: turn all the Thundercats to stone. And as you may have guessed it, that was all part of the plan. Later, at the Castler's meeting room, you remember Willa, the leader of the Warrior Means. She made her escape from the Treetop Kingdom, and now she's telling Lionel, Panther, and Snarf the bad news that the Lunatics had already gotten to the Treetop Kingdom, only to find out later that Sheila has frozen her sister and the rest of the Warrior Means in ice. So what Lionel wanted to know from Willa, did all this happen? Well, according to Willa, not only that she said it did, she says that the mask of Gorgon up until now has been guarded and only the four creatures had known about it. Now, Lionel wanted to know from Willa, why was it there at the tallest tree to begin with, and why was it embedded? Well, to answer Lionel's question, that's when Willa just let slip to tell him that the reason why the mask was there to begin with is because it'll always face west, away from the hills of Elshima itself. Well, Panthro has his turn to plead his case after learning it from Willa. So what he wanted to know from her is, why there? Well, according to Willa, she then just said that that's where the answer lies. hunch after he learned it from Willa. That's the exact same book that he was looking at through his sword's eye. It was lost, but now thanks to Mumm-ra, he's found it, so now it's no longer lost. So that's when Lynx-o shows up. He's not alone because Bengali's with him. Then Lynx-o told Lionel that he had seen the exact same book as Lionel did with his Sword of Omens. And Lynx-o confessed to Lionel that the moment he saw that book, just like what Lionel did, it just drove him mad, crazy. But according to Lynx-o, now here comes a problem. Time is running out. Then Lynx-o started pleading a case that if something isn't done soon and if the mask isn't found quick, then this can be a problem and then the hills of Elshima will come to life. Just take it easy, Lynx-o, Migali said, and so Lynx-o went to sit down in the chair. So what Lina wanted to know from Lynx-o, what do those hills have to do with anything? Well, according to Lynx-o, he kept pleading his case about the hills has to become to life if the mask isn't found and that the child will be risen and etc. Well, Lionel, after he learned it from Lynx-o, there's only one thing left to do. To investigate further, he must look through his Sword of Omens, just like what any good guy would do. So that's what Lionel did. So what Lionel did is that he's asked the Sword of Omens to show him the hills of Elshima. So it did. And what Lionel saw was unbelievable. These that same hills that Lynx-o had been talking about. He knew that what Lynx-o said was true. Long story short, Lynx-o also told Lionel to find the mask, so Lionel did through his Sword of Omens, of course. But Lionel, what he saw was unbelievable. He found the mask all right, but he also finds Mumm-ra, and they're in the Pyramid's tomb chamber. Now remember, that's the exact same mask from the Treetop Kingdom that Mumm-ra has gotten earlier. What Mumm-ra did was unbelievable. He was daring Lionel to hand over the sword's power because he said in his case that with that and the master's power combined, it would turn anyone to life. And with the master's power, it can also turn anyone to stone. That's what happened with Tugmug and Chilla earlier back at Treetop Kingdom. So, Lionel, after he found out what Mumm-ra did and he had pleaded the case to insult him, that was the final straw. And so he told Panther that we had to go right now. Panther and Lionel's way out. That's when Lynx says, wait a minute. If you use the source power and it combines with the mask power, then this can mean a serious problem, he said. Then Lynx says, if you wait for me, I can guide you there, he suggested. Lynx-o had pleaded the case to say that the elfin child must not be brought to life again, and then he collapsed. That's when Lionel said to Panther, we don't have time to wait. Even though Panther agrees with Lionel and says, we gotta do something about this, but we gotta do it right now. So they head off, but they're not alone because Willa, the leader of the warrior maidens, she goes along with them. So in the Thunder Tank, off they went, and they're now on their way to the Black Pyramid. So meanwhile, the Black Pyramid, now that the Thunder Tank had arrived, everybody got out. And that's when they were looking for a way in. But then wait, Willa saw something or someone that is standing there. It's her sister Nada, or so she thought. But what Willa doesn't even realize, and neither did Lionel and Panther, now remember the real Nada was still frozen in ice. Well, Willa decided to think nothing of it, so she asked her sister, how did you get here? How is this possible? So that's when Nada said, I'm just glad you're all here, she said. That's when Nada had pleaded her case to say, well, I got good news. I found us a way in. Follow me. However, both Pantro and Lionel sensed that something was off, but they decided to think nothing of it and decided to follow Nada, or so they thought. However, Willa sensed that something was off. But remember, that's not the real Nina, but she was unaware of it, so she was asking her just to be sure. Are you sure you escaped from Chilla? Of course I did, Nina said. Still, Willa was not aware that her real sister Nina was still frozen in ice back at Treetop Kingdom. So Nina says, well, what are we waiting for? This way, quickly. Well, before they could all go in, that's when Willa told Panther that there's something off with her and she doesn't know why. But unfortunately for Panther, he decided to dismiss Willa's suspicions. It says, Oh, come on, you just worry too much, just like what Lynx-o did. Now let's go. So all three of them went in, and they followed Data, or so they thought. So by the time that all four of them had arrived at the tomb chamber, they not only found it weird that all they saw was the big red book on the little table, the tomb chamber's empty, and what's worst of all, that the mask was missing. Panthro started to have a thought, and then suggested to Lionel to use the sword again. So Lionel followed Panthro's suggestion, and that's exactly what he did. But then suddenly the fake native just let slip to say, I'll give you a sight you'll never forget. And that's when the mask appeared. And that's the exact same mask that he saw through his sword earlier before he left the lair. He and Panthro and also Willa. So what the mask did was unbelievable. He turned all three good guys to stone. Panthro, Lino, and Willa, the leader of the warrior maidens. So unfortunately for her, that yes, it's true. Nada was Mumm-ra in disguise, and she should have realized it that her real sister was frozen in ice. So unfortunately for Panthro, also, before he was turned to stone, he should have listened to Willa when he sensed that something was off. Now he wished he had. Things are looking bad, and if that's not bad enough, what Mumm-ra did next was unbelievable. He just told Lionel a case while he was turned to stone that it was his own pride that led to his own downfall, and that led to this. And if that's not also bad enough, what Mumm-ra did next is that he took Lionel's sword and he just placed it in front of the mask of Gorgon. So that's why Lynx-o flipped out earlier. He wanted to prevent Mumm-ra from bringing the hills to life, but now what Lynx-o had predicted has come true. Speaking of Lynx-o, meanwhile in Castler's meeting room, and don't forget Bengali's still with him, when he saw that Lynx-o woke up, he had no idea what's going on. So even though Bengali had no idea, and that's when Lynx told them that there's something wrong, and they had to hurry. We have to go right now, Lynx said. Get the thunderstrike ready. Give me behind the railboard, he said. But Bengali declined. He told Lynxo that he must not go through with it. I have to, Lynxo said. It's the only way. Because if we don't stop this and soon, then this can mean bad news for Third Earth, he said. Now that the Thunderstrike's all set, it's ready to go. So it left the Castlear's hangar. So then Bengali was told by Link, so hurry, hurry, we must get there before sunrise. What's the big deal about the hills of Elshima anyway? Bengali asked. So to answer Bengali's question, that's when Linkso suggested for Bengali to look it up. So Bengali did. And what Bengali saw was unbelievable. Elshima is an anagram. Back with Bengali, now that he knows what was going on, that's when Linkso just let slip that those weren't real hills at all. It's a sleeping child, and that's why it became that way. And that's why, according to Linkso, he told Lionel about it back at the lair, at the meeting room, and he wanted to stop this from happening. So now that there's no time to lose. Also, according to Linkso, that's why the Mask of Gorgon must not be used, but now Mumm-ra is using it. No wonder Linkso had been telling Lionel that he must wait for him, but now that Lionel's turned to stone, now he wished he had. So, Linkso just told Bengali that the Mask of Gorgon must be destroyed, and they knew they had to hurry. Back at the Black Pyramid with Mumm-ra, the Mask of Gorgon, and Lionel's sword, things are looking hopeless. So what Mumm-ra did is that thanks to the mask's power combining with the sword's power, what Mumm-ra did is that it's unbelievable. He just brought the hills of Oshima to life. Well, it's not sleeping anymore because by surprise, the stone child has been brought to life. So unfortunately for Link, so that what he has said to Lionel and Panthro before they even left has finally come into play. Oh, I forgot to mention that earlier, Linkso just told Bengali that, aha, he has a plan. But we'll get to that later. Back with the elf child that has now been brought to life thanks to that creep Mumm-ra, things are looking bad for Third Earth. Unless something is done fast. Now back with Lynx-o's plan that I was telling about, but before that could get underway, that's when Bengali's getting worried that the thunder strike would crash. But Lynx-o told Bengali not to worry, that they can go inside the giant's ear instead. So that's what the thunder strike did. So now that the thunder strike's inside of the giant's ear, so what Lynx-o told Bengali that the plan was simply this. He wanted to make a noise that is so loud that the giant couldn't stand it. Well, why not? Giants hate noise. So that was what gave Lynx-o the idea. So he went for it. Thanks to the Thunderstrike's cannon, it actually worked. The giant was wincing in pain, so it's now time for the Thunderstrike to leave. Now you may say it's crazy, but Lynx's plan worked. Good news for the Thunderstrike, it manages to escape. But back with Mumm-ra, he sensed that something was wrong. He's like, wait a minute, this book never said anything about this. Of course not, because what the book didn't say is about the giant's weakness. And guess what? Thanks to Lynx-o, he found it. So back with the Gorgon child, it started to collapse. When back in the pyramid, when by the time that the Gorgon child had collapsed, the mask inside of the pyramid started to shake. So Mumm-ra tries to save it the best way he knew how in the tomb chamber, of course. So, bad news for Mumm-ra is because of that earthquake and the giant's collapse that made the pyramid shake. So, what the mask did, it went right out the window and fell to the ground where it's destroyed. Now, Mumm-ra is all upset. He almost won that day. But guess what? That plan backfired thanks to Lynx-o. He says, oh no, the mask is destroyed. The spell is broken. Oh, also the good news is that the three good guys are no longer in stone. And let's not forget Tugmug and Sheila. We'll get back to them later. They're no longer in stone either. Oh, and what about the Gorgon child? Because the master's spell is broken, it returned to the hills again, just like it once was before. So now that what Mumm-ra said is absolutely true and that the master's power is gone forever because it is destroyed, he swore revenge by saying that he will prevail someday. He said that someday when he'll find the book again, he will make the child his again, so that the Thundercats will become statues as Mumm-ra's act of revenge. So meanwhile, back at Treetop Kingdom, remember Chill and Tugmug that were no longer statues? Told you we'd get back to them later. So after what they just went through, they soon left. Back in the Tomb Chamber, now I did say that the good guys are returning to normal again, and I wasn't kidding. Panthro, Lionel, and Willa, and yes, it's true, they're back to normal again. Now that the good guys are back to normal, what Lionel wanted to know, where did his sword go? And that's when Willa says, look, up there. And you know something? In Willa's case, she's not kidding because what the sword did is that it not only levitated, but it went right into the book. So, unfortunately, too bad for Mumm-ra, the book is destroyed too. So now that the book is destroyed, thanks to the Sword of Omens, it went right back to Lionel's hand. Well, let's just hope that Mumm-ra will never use that book ever again, because now that it's gone, and so were the Third secrets. And of course, in Lionel's case, he hopes that it's going to stay that way. So, oh, and better than that, he owes it all to Lynx-o because he's the one that saved the day this time. Now that everyone's left the pyramid and joined up with Lynx-o in the Thunderstrike, even though we didn't see it, but it is confirmed that Nada and the Warring Maidens are no longer frozen anymore. And now Nada just told her sister Willa the bad news. Now, thanks to Chilla, she's got a cold. Of course, Lynx just told the Thundercats, Panthro, and Lionel something even better. When the mask was destroyed, everything that the child had stepped on is now returned to normal. So you've heard right, everything is now restored. Now, as I said before, now that Nada's no longer in ice, she wanted to make Chilla pay for what she did the next time she shows up. She told that to her sister Willa, the leader. Well, Lionel has his turn to apologize to Lynx-o. The reason is because he said regrettably if he had listened to Lynx-o and just waited for him, then none of this would have happened. And now he wished he had. Also, regrettably, according to Lionel, he lets Mumm-ra control him. So that's why Lionel got upset. Well, Lynx-o not only forgives Lionel and said that there was no need to apologize. We all lose our emotions and control most of our lives. Well, Panther has his turn to agree with Lynx-o. And of course, Lionel has his turn to agree with Panthro, and let's not forget, Bengali has his turn to agree with Lionel, so they all head home. And I guess it's confirmed that Willa and Nada had gone back to the Treetop Kingdom. So yes, it's true. Once again, Murmur's plan backfired. So that ends episode 13.